The emergency alarm screamed through the massive space station floating above the planet Centauri Prime. Dr. Kim Hana rushed through the metal corridors, her lab coat flying behind her as she headed to the most important meeting in galactic history. Something terrible was happening, and nobody knew how to stop it. The main conference room buzzed with panic. Alien beings from across the galaxy had gathered here. Some looked like walking crystals that sparkled in the light. Others were pure energy floating in the air like living lightning, and some were so ancient they remembered when stars were first born. These weren't just any aliens. These were the smartest beings in the universe, the ones who built machines that could move entire planets and create new suns from nothing. But today, for the first time in thousands of years, they were scared. "Show us the readings again," demanded Commander Velthar, his energy form flickering with worry. The giant screen lit up with images that made everyone's stomach drop. 3 entire star systems, billions of stars, planets, and everything in them, had simply vanished. Not exploded, not destroyed, but completely erased as if they never existed at all. The Void Plague, they called it. It was like a disease, but instead of making people sick, it made reality itself disappear. Wherever it touched, space and time just stopped existing. It was spreading fast, consuming everything in its path like a hungry monster that ate the very fabric of the universe. Hana watched as the crystal beings vibrated with fear. Their minds could think at the speed of light and solve problems that would take human computers millions of years. But they were stumped. The energy creatures, who existed as pure thought and could bend the laws of physics with their will, admitted they had no answers. Even the builder race, so old and wise they had forgotten more science than humans had ever learned, sat in defeated silence. "We've tried everything," said High Researcher Zixtal, his crystalline body dimming with exhaustion. "Our quantum reality anchors, our dimensional stabilizers, our matter energy converters. Nothing works. In fact, every time we try to stop it, the plague grows stronger and spreads faster." Hana felt a chill run down her spine. She was just a human, the newest species to join this galactic community. Humans had only figured out faster than light, travel 100 years ago, while some of these aliens had been traveling between stars for millions of years. What could she possibly understand that they didn't? But as she stared at the data flowing across the screens, something bothered her. The alien scientists were talking about quantum mathematics, dimensional theory, and reality manipulation. All stuff way beyond human understanding. Yet the more she looked at the plague's behavior, the more familiar it seemed. The way it spread from system to system reminded her of watching a virus outbreak back on Earth. The pattern of how it consumed matter looked like bacteria eating nutrients in a petri dish. Even the way it seemed to adapt and change felt like watching evolution happen in fast forward. "Excuse me," Hana said quietly, but her voice was lost in the chaos of alien languages and panic. The room filled with clicking, buzzing, and sounds no human throat could make as the greatest minds in the galaxy argued about solutions involving technologies humans couldn't even pronounce. She tried again, louder this time. "What if we're looking at this wrong?" A few of the nearby aliens turned to look at her with what she assumed was polite curiosity. After all, humans were still considered the baby species of the galaxy, smart enough to be useful, but lacking the deep understanding needed for serious problems. Dr. Mordek, one of the crystal beings, made a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Through the translation device, his words came out patient but condescending. "Dr. Hana, we appreciate human enthusiasm, but this is a cosmic-level threat requiring solutions beyond biological thinking. This isn't a disease that can be cured with medicine." But Hana couldn't shake the feeling that everyone was missing something obvious. While they focused on the impossible physics of how the plague worked, she kept seeing patterns that reminded her of life itself. The way it grew, the way it spread, the way it seemed to learn and adapt. It all felt biological, even if it was happening on a scale that involved entire solar systems. As the meeting continued and the alien experts grew more desperate, Hana made a decision that would change everything. If the smartest beings in the universe couldn't solve this problem by making it more complicated, maybe it was time to try making it simpler. Maybe it was time for the humans to show what they could do. The plague was still spreading, consuming reality itself as it moved closer to the populated worlds. Time was running out, and the impossible was about to become humanity's greatest test. While the galaxy's greatest minds worked frantically in their advanced laboratories, building machines, the size of cities and running calculations that would make supercomputers cry, Dr. Kim Hana did something completely different. She walked down to the civilian quarters of the space station and started knocking on doors. Her first stop was Park Jin-ho's small research lab. He was studying tiny creatures that lived in the deadly radiation clouds between stars. Organisms, so tough they could survive in conditions that would instantly kill any other known life form. When Hana explained her idea, Jin-ho looked at her like she'd lost her mind. "You want to treat a cosmic disaster like it's a sick patient?" he asked, setting down his microscope. "Hana, this thing is eating entire star systems. It's not exactly a case of the flu." But Hana was determined. She showed him the data she'd been collecting while everyone else focused on quantum physics. "Look at these patterns, Jin-ho. The way it spreads from one system to another. It follows the same routes that space traders use, just like how diseases spread along travel routes back on Earth. And see how it grows faster in areas with more technology. That's exactly how superbugs develop resistance to medicine." Next, she found Lee Minji in the station's medical bay. Minji had spent the last decade jumping from one crisis to another, stopping disease outbreaks on remote colonies where people lived in harsh conditions. She was used to working with limited resources and simple solutions. "The alien doctors think I'm crazy," Hana told her friend. "They keep talking about reality distortion fields and dimensional collapse theory. But what if this plague isn't a physics problem at all? What if it's biological?" Minji pulled up the plague data on her medical scanner, the same device she used to track flu outbreaks and food poisoning cases. "You know what? This does look familiar. See how it starts slow in each new area, then explodes exponentially? Classic infection pattern. And the way it seems to learn from each encounter. That's just like how viruses mutate." Their third team member came from an unexpected place. Choi Dae-ho worked in the station's agricultural section, growing food in giant hydroponic gardens. He understood how ecosystems worked, how predators and prey balanced each other out, and how sometimes the smallest change could affect an entire environment. "The aliens keep throwing bigger weapons at this thing," Dae-ho said, reviewing the military reports. "But in farming, we learned long ago that sometimes the harder you fight a pest, the stronger it gets. Maybe this plague is like those super weeds that grow stronger when you spray them with chemicals." The most surprising addition to their team was Nam Yuna, who ran the daycare center for the station's families. She specialized in understanding how children learned and developed, how they absorbed information and adapted to new situations. When Hana explained what they suspected about the plague, Yuna nodded thoughtfully. "It sounds like a toddler in a way," she said. "Always learning, always adapting, getting more sophisticated with each new experience. The more complex the environment you give a child, the more complex their responses become." While the four humans sat around a simple table in the station's cafeteria, eating regular food and drinking coffee, the alien scientists worked in laboratories filled with equipment that could manipulate the building blocks of reality itself. The contrast was almost ridiculous. The most advanced beings in the universe using technology that seemed like magic, while four humans used basic observation and common sense. But the human approach was revealing disturbing patterns that the sophisticated analysis had missed. The plague wasn't just consuming matter and energy randomly. It was learning from every encounter, growing more sophisticated with each new challenge. Every time the aliens deployed their advanced weapons, the plague absorbed that knowledge and became stronger. "It's like feeding a fire," Minji observed, studying the combat reports. "Every time they try to fight it with complex technology, they're giving it more fuel to burn." Jin-ho made the connection to his research on extreme organisms. Some life forms don't just survive in hostile environments. They actually need that hostility to thrive. What if this plague feeds on complexity itself? What if our advanced technology is exactly what it needs to grow? The more they studied the data, the clearer the pattern became. The plague grew fastest in areas with the most advanced civilizations. It seemed to target the most sophisticated technology first. It adapted most quickly when faced with the most complex solutions. While the galactic experts built increasingly elaborate weapons and defenses, the human team realized they were looking at the problem completely backwards. The aliens' greatest strength, their incredible advanced knowledge and technology, had become their fatal weakness. They were literally feeding the enemy every time they tried to fight it. But if complexity made the plague stronger, what would happen if they tried the opposite approach? What if instead of making their response more sophisticated, they made it as simple as possible? It was a crazy idea, but crazy was all they had left. Pattern recognition is like having a superpower that lets you see things others miss. It's the ability to spot connections, similarities, and repeating elements in everything around you. Think of it as your brain's way of making sense of chaos by finding order in what seems random. Your brain is constantly looking for patterns, without you even realizing it. When you wake up and immediately know it's going to rain because the air feels different, that's pattern recognition. When you can tell your friend is upset just by how they text you, that's your mind picking up on subtle patterns in their communication style. This skill works like a detective's magnifying glass. Just as a detective notices small clues that others overlook, pattern recognition helps you spot the hidden connections in daily life. Maybe you notice that every time you eat certain foods, you feel tired afterward, or you realize that traffic is always heavier on days when there's a big game in town. These aren't coincidences. They're patterns your brain has learned to recognize. The fascinating thing about patterns is that they exist everywhere. In nature, you see them in the spiral of a seashell, the way tree branches grow, or how birds fly in formation. In music, patterns create rhythm and melody. Even in human behavior, we follow patterns. The way we walk, talk, and make decisions often follows predictable sequences. Your smartphone uses pattern recognition constantly. When it suggests the next word you want to type, it's recognizing patterns in how you usually write. When it unlocks using your face, it's matching the pattern of your features. Even when you're scrolling through social media, the app is recognizing patterns in what you like to show you similar content. Learning to consciously use pattern recognition can transform how you approach problems. Instead of seeing each challenge as completely new, you start noticing similarities to situations you've handled before. This makes problem-solving much faster and more effective. It's like having a mental library of solutions that you can apply to new situations. In conversations, pattern recognition helps you understand people better. You start noticing when someone always changes the subject when discussing certain topics, or when they use specific words when they're excited or stressed. These patterns help you communicate more effectively and build stronger relationships. The business world relies heavily on pattern recognition. Successful entrepreneurs often spot patterns in what customers want before others do. They notice gaps in the market or trends that are just beginning to emerge. Stock traders look for patterns in market movements. Even something as simple as choosing the best time to post on social media involves recognizing patterns in when your audience is most active. Pattern recognition also helps you learn new skills faster. When you're learning to cook, you start recognizing patterns in how flavors work together, or how different techniques affect texture. When picking up a new language, you notice patterns in grammar and pronunciation that make everything click into place more quickly. However, pattern recognition isn't always perfect. Sometimes our brains see patterns that aren't really there, or we assume a pattern will continue when it actually changes. This is why it's important to stay flexible and keep updating your understanding as you gather new information. The key to improving your pattern recognition is paying attention to details and staying curious about why things happen the way they do. Instead of just accepting that something works, ask yourself what underlying patterns might be causing it. Keep a mental note of recurring themes in your life, work, and relationships. Practice looking for patterns in different areas. Notice patterns in your energy levels throughout the day, in how different people respond to various types of communication, or in what makes certain activities more enjoyable than others. The more you consciously look for patterns, the better you become at spotting them automatically. Remember that pattern recognition is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. Start small by noticing simple patterns in your daily routine, then gradually work up to more complex situations. You might be surprised at how much clearer everything becomes when you start seeing the hidden connections all around you. This skill becomes especially powerful when combined with other thinking tools. When you can recognize patterns and then think about them systematically, you develop a deeper understanding of how the world works. You become someone who doesn't just react to situations but can anticipate and prepare for what's coming next. The beauty of pattern recognition is that it makes life more interesting and manageable. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by endless random events, you start seeing the underlying structure that connects everything. This creates a sense of understanding and control that makes you more confident in handling whatever comes your way. Pattern recognition turns you from someone who just experiences life into someone who truly understands it. You become the person others come to for insights because you see connections they miss. This isn't about being smarter. It's about training your mind to notice what was always there. Sometimes the best solutions are the ones that feel completely wrong at first. This is the power of counterintuitive thinking, finding answers that go against what seems obvious or natural. It's like discovering that the fastest way to get somewhere might actually involve taking a longer route, or that the best way to fall asleep is to stop trying so hard to sleep. Your brain loves shortcuts and familiar patterns. When you see a problem, your mind immediately jumps to the most obvious solution. But here's the catch. If the obvious solution worked, the problem probably wouldn't exist in the first place. This is where counterintuitive thinking becomes your secret weapon. Think about when you're stuck in quicksand in the movies. Your instinct screams to struggle and fight your way out, but that actually makes you sink faster. The counterintuitive solution is to relax, spread your weight, and move slowly. It feels wrong, but it saves your life. Real-world problems often work the same way. Consider how restaurants handle long wait times. The obvious solution seems like getting people seated faster. But smart restaurants discovered something counterintuitive. If you give waiting customers something interesting to do, like watching the kitchen or enjoying free appetizers, they actually feel like they're waiting less time, even if the actual wait stays the same. They solved the perception problem instead of the time problem. In relationships, counterintuitive solutions appear everywhere. When someone is upset, your first instinct might be to fix their problem or give advice. But often, the counterintuitive approach works better, simply listening without trying to solve anything. People frequently don't want solutions. They want to feel heard and understood. The business world is full of counterintuitive successes. Instead of competing on price by making products cheaper, some companies deliberately make their products more expensive to signal higher quality. Luxury brands use this strategy constantly. They discovered that higher prices can actually increase demand because people associate cost with value. When you're learning something new, your instinct might be to practice the same thing over and over until you master it. But research shows a counterintuitive approach works better, mixing up different skills and practicing them in random order. It feels less organized and efficient, but your brain actually learns faster and retains information longer. Physical. Fitness offers great examples too. If you want to build muscle, the counterintuitive truth is that muscles actually grow during rest periods, not during workouts. The workout creates tiny tears in muscle fibers, and they rebuild stronger when you're sleeping or relaxing. Push too hard without rest, and you actually slow down your progress. Money management follows counterintuitive principles as well. When markets crash and everyone is panicking and selling, the counterintuitive move that often pays off is buying when prices are low. When everyone else is greedy and buying at high prices, the smart money often sells. It takes courage to go against the crowd, but that's often where the best opportunities hide. Even productivity works counterintuitively. When you have a massive to-do list, your brain wants to tackle the biggest, hardest tasks first, but starting with tiny, easy wins often works better. These small victories build momentum and confidence that carries you through the bigger challenges later. In negotiations, counterintuitive approaches often win. Instead of starting with what you want, Successful negotiators sometimes begin by understanding what the other person needs. Instead of arguing why you're right, they ask questions that help the other person discover the solution themselves. It feels backward, but it creates better outcomes for everyone. Creative problem-solving thrives on counterintuitive thinking. When you're stuck on a creative project, your instinct is to push harder and think more intensely. But often the breakthrough comes when you step away completely. Take a walk, do something unrelated, or even sleep on it. Your subconscious mind continues working on the problem while your conscious mind rests. The key to developing counterintuitive thinking is questioning your assumptions. When you face a problem, ask yourself what everyone assumes is true about this situation. Then, wonder what would happen if the opposite were true instead. This mental exercise opens up possibilities you never considered. Practice looking for examples in your daily life where the obvious solution didn't work, but an unexpected approach did. Maybe you've noticed that trying to force yourself to be happy when you're sad doesn't work, but accepting the sadness and letting it pass naturally does. Or perhaps you've found that the more desperately you want something, the more it seems to slip away. Counterintuitive solutions often require patience and trust in the process. They feel uncomfortable because they go against your natural instincts, but that discomfort is usually a sign that you're onto something powerful. The solutions that feel most natural and obvious are often the ones everyone else has already tried. Remember that counterintuitive doesn't mean random or illogical. These solutions work because they address the real underlying issue instead of just the surface symptoms. They recognize that human psychology, natural systems, and complex problems often work in ways that surprise us. The next time you're stuck on a problem, try asking yourself what the most unexpected solution might be. You might just discover that the way forward was the opposite of what you thought all along. History is filled with moments when everyone said something couldn't be done, right up until someone actually did it. These breakthrough moments teach us that the word impossible is often just a limitation of our current imagination, not reality itself. Just over a century ago, respected scientists published papers proving that human flight was impossible. They had mathematical equations and logical arguments showing why humans would never soar through the sky like birds. Then two bicycle mechanics from Ohio changed everything in 12 seconds at Kitty Hawk. What seemed impossible on Tuesday became reality on Wednesday. The fascinating thing about these impossible achievements is how quickly they shift from unthinkable to ordinary. Your great-grandparents lived in a world where talking to someone on the other side of the planet was pure fantasy. Today, you video chat with people across oceans without giving it a second thought. What once seemed like magic is now so normal that you get annoyed when the connection is slow. Before the 4-minute mile was broken, doctors actually believed that running that fast would cause a human heart to explode. They had medical evidence and scientific theories backing up this claim. Roger Bannister ignored the experts and ran the mile in 3 minutes and 59 seconds. Within just 2 years, dozens of other runners had also broken the 4-minute barrier. The limitation wasn't physical, it was mental. Technology offers countless examples of impossible things becoming everyday reality. 50 years ago, the idea of carrying the world's entire knowledge in your pocket would have sounded absurd. The computers that put humans on the moon had less processing power than your smartphone. Yet here you are, with instant access to virtually any information you want, treating it as completely normal. Medical breakthroughs follow the same pattern. Doctors once believed that washing hands before surgery was unnecessary and even insulting. The idea that tiny invisible creatures could cause disease seemed ridiculous. Heart transplants, cancer treatments, and countless other medical procedures were once considered impossible fantasies that are now routine operations, saving lives every day. Even in business and economics, impossible transformations happen regularly. People said nobody would ever buy things online because they needed to touch and examine products first. Online shopping seemed like a limited niche that would never replace real stores. Today, entire industries exist purely in digital space, and physical stores struggle to keep up with online convenience. The entertainment industry constantly breaks its own impossible barriers. Silent movies were supposed to be the peak of cinema until sound arrived. Black and white films were perfect until color changed everything. Going to theaters was irreplaceable until television brought entertainment home. Physical media was essential until streaming made it obsolete. Each transition seemed impossible until it became inevitable. Personal achievements work the same way. Maybe you've experienced this yourself. Something that felt completely beyond your abilities suddenly became possible through practice, learning, or simply changing your perspective. Learning to drive once seemed impossibly complex with all those controls and rules to remember simultaneously. Now you probably do it without conscious thought while having conversations or listening to music. Social changes that seemed impossible often happen faster than anyone expects. Attitudes and systems that felt permanent and unchangeable can shift dramatically within a single generation. What your grandparents considered impossible social progress became your parents' normal reality. And what seemed impossible to your parents has become your everyday experience. The pattern in all these impossible to possible transformations reveals something important about human nature. We consistently underestimate our ability to adapt, innovate, and overcome limitations. Our brains are wired to see current constraints as permanent features of reality, rather than temporary obstacles waiting to be solved. What makes something transition from impossible to possible usually involves someone who refuses to accept current limitations as final answers. These breakthrough moments happen when people ask different questions instead of accepting standard assumptions. Instead of asking why something can't be done, they ask how it might be done differently. Sometimes, the impossible becomes possible through pure persistence and incremental improvements. Other times it happens through completely reframing the problem or discovering new approaches that make old obstacles irrelevant. The key insight is that most impossible things are only impossible with current methods and understanding. Looking at today's impossible challenges, you can bet that many will seem laughably simple to future generations. Things that feel completely beyond current human capability will likely become routine parts of daily life. The pattern suggests that our descendants will look back at our limitations the same way we look back at people who thought human flight was impossible. This perspective changes how you approach your own challenges. When something feels impossible in your personal or professional life, remember that impossible often just means not yet figured out. The solution might require learning new skills, trying different approaches, or simply persisting longer than seems reasonable. The next time someone tells you something is impossible, consider whether they might be using yesterday's limitations to judge tomorrow's possibilities. History shows us repeatedly that the impossible has a funny way of becoming inevitable once someone decides to make it happen. The most exciting part is that right now, someone somewhere is working on making today's impossible challenges into tomorrow's ordinary reality.